Hey, I don't usually do this kind of thing, writing to strangers on the internet about my personal life, but after watching your channel for the past few weeks, I felt like maybe you'd understand. Or at least, maybe sharing this will help someone else avoid the mistakes I made. I'm not comfortable sharing my name, so let's just leave it at that. But this is my story, and it's completely real. Every embarrassing, painful bit of it. It started with divorce papers. 12 years of marriage, reduced to signatures and a handshake with lawyers who barely looked me in the eye. We'd been dying slowly for years, the kind of death that happens in silence, where you stop arguing because you stop caring enough to fight. When she finally said the words, "I want a divorce," I felt something break loose inside me. Not anger, just relief. And then immediately after the relief came the crushing weight of what that meant. No kids, no family dinners to look forward to, no reason to come home to anything except an empty apartment that still smelled like her perfume in the closet she'd emptied out. The first month after she moved out was the worst. I'd come home from work, heat up something from the freezer, and sit in front of the TV until I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. My buddies tried to help. Get back out there, man. This is your chance to start fresh. Time heals everything. All that bullshit people say when they don't know what else to say. But time wasn't healing anything. Time was just making me realize how alone I actually was. One night, I'd been drinking, which probably explains the decision. I opened my laptop and started looking at flights. I wasn't even sure where I wanted to go. I just knew I couldn't stay in that apartment, in that city, walking past the coffee shop where we used to get Sunday breakfast, driving by the movie theater where we'd had our first date. Southeast Asia popped up. Cheap flights, warm weather, completely different from everything I knew. I booked 8 weeks. Thailand, Cambodia, Philippines. Told myself it was just a vacation to clear my head. But really, I was running. Running from the silence, from the memories, from the person I'd become. Bangkok. The first escape Bangkok hit me like a drug. The heat, the noise, the chaos, it was exactly what I needed. Everything moved fast there. Tuk-tuks weaving through traffic, street vendors shouting, tourists stumbling out of bars at 3 a.m. For the first time in months, I felt something other than numb. I did the tourist thing, visited temples, took a boat through the floating markets, ate street food that made my mouth burn but tasted incredible. At night I'd end up at backpacker bars, drinking cheap beer with people from Germany, Australia, England. Everyone had a story. Everyone was running from something or towards something. But when I got back to my hotel room each night, the silence crept back in. Lying in a strange bed in a strange city, I'd realized that traveling wasn't fixing anything. It was just postponing the reckoning. Cambodia was beautiful but brief. Angkor Wat at sunrise, the history, the temples. It was impressive, but my heart wasn't in it. I was restless. I wanted something more than sightseeing. I wanted to feel connected to something again. Manila. Where it all changed. The Philippines was supposed to be the last stop before I flew home and faced real life again. I landed in Manila on a Tuesday afternoon, and the city swallowed me whole. It wasn't like Bangkok. Bangkok felt polished, designed for tourists. Manila was raw. Crumbling buildings next to brand new shopping malls. Kids selling cigarettes at traffic lights. Jeepneys painted in wild colours rattling down streets that seemed to have no traffic rules whatsoever. It was messy and loud and somehow magnetic. I spent the first few days wandering Intramuros, the old walled city, Spanish colonial architecture, cobblestone streets, churches that had been standing for 400 years. I liked the weight of history there. It felt like a place that had survived things. But at night the loneliness came back. I'd sit in my hotel room, listening to the city noise outside, car horns, karaoke from somewhere down the street, the constant hum of life, and feel more isolated than ever. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I went walking. Just needed to be around people, around noise, around anything that wasn't the inside of my own head. I ended up on a side street in Malate, neon signs buzzing, music thumping from open doorways. There was a bar. I almost walked past it, but something made me stop. Maybe it was the music. Maybe it was just desperation. I went in. The place was dimly lit, crowded. Foreign men, mostly older, mostly white, sitting with Filipino women. Some were clearly tourists. Others looked like they'd been there a while. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and cheap perfume. I felt out of place immediately. I wasn't looking for what most of those guys were looking for. I just wanted a beer and some human interaction. I found a seat at the bar and ordered a San Miguel. That's when I noticed her. She was at the other end of the bar, talking with another girl. She wasn't the loudest or the flashiest woman in the room, but there was something about her. She had this way of observing everything, like she was reading the room, reading people. When our eyes met, she smiled. Not the practiced commercial smile I'd seen from some of the other women. Just a smile. She walked over. "You look new here," she said. Her English was clear, just touched with an accent that softened the edges. "I am," I admitted. "Just got here a few days ago." She tilted her head, studying me. "You look lonely." I laughed, surprised by her directness. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who knows what lonely looks like," she said. Her name was Rina. We talked for hours that night, about where I was from, why I was traveling, what I was running from. I told her about the divorce, about feeling lost. She told me about her family in the province, about working at the bar, because it paid better than anything else she could find with her education level, about sending money home every week to help her younger siblings finish school. There was no shame in how she said it, just facts. This is my life, this is what I do to survive. I went back the next night, and the night after that. Soon we started meeting outside the bar. She showed me parts of Manila tourists never see. Hole-in-the-wall restaurants where you could eat for 100 pesos, markets that sold everything from live chickens to pirated DVDs, neighborhoods where kids played basketball in the streets, and everyone knew each other. With Rina, the city transformed. It wasn't just chaos anymore, it was life, a texture, meaning. I was falling for her, hard and fast, the way you do when you're vulnerable and someone makes you feel seen again. But my flight home was getting closer. 8 weeks was almost up. The idea of going back to my empty apartment after her, felt unbearable. I'd met other expats by then, older guys who'd decided to stay. Some taught English, some ran small businesses. They warned me it wasn't easy, but it was possible. "If you really want to stay, you can make it work," one guy told me over beers. "Just don't expect it to be like home." One afternoon, sitting with Rina in Rizal Park, watching families picnic and kids fly kites, I made my decision. "I think I'm going to stay," I said. She looked at me, eyes wide. "Stay? You mean live here?" "Yeah, I don't want to go back, not now." "You would stay for me, for you, for us, for whatever this is?" The smile that spread across her face was the brightest thing I'd seen in a long time. Within a month, I'd cancelled my flight home, found a job teaching English at a language school in Makati, and rented a small apartment. Rihanna moved in with me. The apartment wasn't much, 3rd floor of a building with cracked walls, mismatched bathroom tiles, and a balcony barely big enough for 2 plastic chairs. But Rina brought home a potted plant from the market and hung string lights across the window, and suddenly it felt like home. More like home than the house I'd shared with my ex-wife ever had. I fell into a routine. Every morning I'd walk to the language school where I taught conversational English. The pay was modest, about 35,000 pesos a month, maybe $700, but it covered rent and groceries. My students were mostly teenagers preparing for college entrance exams, or adults hoping to work overseas. They were polite, hardworking, sometimes funny. Teaching them gave me something I hadn't felt in years: purpose. Evenings I'd come home to find Rihanna cooking rice and adobo, humming to herself in the kitchen. We'd eat dinner at our wobbly second-hand table, then sit on the balcony with San Miguel beers, watching traffic crawl below, listening to the city's soundtrack, honking horns, barking dogs, someone's karaoke drifting through the humid air. I'd look at her then, hair pulled back, face soft in the streetlight glow, and feel something I thought I'd lost forever. Belonging. But even in those early happy days, there was tension. Rina hadn't quit the bar yet. We told ourselves it was temporary, just until I got my first paycheck, just until we were stable. But every night she left in her tight dress and heels, a knot twisted in my stomach. I trusted her. I did. But I hated the thought of other men looking at her, of her sitting at their tables pretending to laugh at their jokes. I hated knowing what that place was. After a few weeks, I couldn't take it anymore. "I don't want you working there anymore," I said one night after she came home late. She looked at me carefully. "Then how will I help my family?" "You know I send money every week." "I'll cover it. I said, maybe too quickly. I'll take care of you. Of them. You don't have to do this anymore. For a moment her face softened. Then she reached across and touched my hand. Are you sure? It's not easy. They always need something. I'm sure. I meant it. My heart was bigger than my wallet, but I didn't realize that yet. The next day she quit. For a few months life was good. Really good. We'd wake early on weekends to explore Divisoria Market, where Rina would bargain fiercely with vendors, always getting prices cut in half, then turning to me with a triumphant grin. We rode jeepneys through crowded streets, pressed shoulder to shoulder with strangers, her hand in mine. We took trips to Tagaytay, watching steam rise from Taal Volcano. We swam at Batangas beaches, lying side by side on the sand, until the sun set. Sometimes we didn't go anywhere. We'd stay in, cook together, curl up on our second-hand couch to watch Filipino soap operas I could barely follow. She'd translate the dramatic plot twists for me, laughing at my confused reactions. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, but it was ours. Then the first emergency hit. 2 months after she quit the bar, Rina's younger brother broke his arm playing basketball. The family needed money for hospital bills, about 15,000 pesos. She asked me gently, apologetically. Of course I said yes. I wired the money, telling myself it was a one-time thing. It wasn't. A few weeks later, the rice harvest failed in her village. They needed money for food. Then her sister needed tuition money for school. Then her mother needed medicine for high blood pressure. Each time I told myself it was temporary, that once things stabilized, the requests would stop. But they didn't stop. And my teacher's salary wasn't enough to cover everything. I started dipping into my savings, what little I had left after moving here. I cut back on my own expenses, stopped going out with colleagues, ate cheaper food. I told myself this was what love looked like, sacrifice. But late at night, lying awake while Rina slept beside me, I felt the weight pressing down. How long could I keep this up? 6 months in, Rina's father died suddenly. Heart attack. She was devastated. Through tears, she told me she needed to go back to the province for the funeral, and she needed money, a lot of it, for the coffin, the ceremony, food for relatives, transportation for family members coming from different areas. She showed me the numbers. 180,000 pesos, more than I made in 2 months. I don't have this, I said, my voice hollow. She clutched my arm. Please. He was my father. I can't let my family down. They're counting on me. I wanted to say no. I knew I should say no, but one look at her face, the grief, the desperation, and I couldn't. I reached for my emergency credit card, the one I'd sworn not to touch. I maxed it out in a single transaction. When she left for the province, I sat alone in our apartment staring at my banking app, the red numbers, the debt I'd just taken on. I told myself it was worth it, that this was what love required. But deep down, I knew something had broken. When Rina came back from the funeral, something had changed. She was quieter, more distant. She still smiled at me, still touched my hand, but sometimes her eyes seemed far away. At night she stayed up late scrolling through her phone. I told myself she was grieving, that the stress of her father's death explained everything, but the truth gnawed at me. Maybe it wasn't just grief. Maybe it was the realization that I couldn't provide what she needed, what her family needed. One evening on the balcony I asked her, "Are you happy?" She looked at me for a long moment. "I'm trying to be." Her words hit harder than any argument could have. A week later she brought it up. "I've been thinking," she said carefully. "Maybe I should go back to the bar. Just for a little while. Just until things get easier." My chest tightened. "Rina, number. We talked about this. I don't want you there." "I know," she said softly, "but we need money." "You're already doing so much. I don't want to watch you drown because of me." I wanted to argue. I wanted to forbid it. But what right did I have? I'd convinced her to quit, promised I could take care of everything, and failed. So I stayed silent. The next night, she put on her dress and heels and left. I sat on the balcony, watching the city lights blur through tears. I didn't want to admit I was crying. The first night Rina went back to the bar, I stayed up waiting. The second night I tried but fell asleep. By the third night I stopped waiting. When she came home, she moved quietly like she didn't want to disturb me. But I was awake. I always was. I'd lie there, eyes closed, listening. The The sound of her heels coming off, the zipper of her dress, the shower running for a long time, as if she was trying to wash something off. She smelled different when she came to bed, a perfume I didn't recognize, smoke, the faint scent of alcohol. I hated it, hated myself for hating it, hated that we'd ended up here. Days turned into weeks. The distance between us widened into a chasm. We still ate dinner together sometimes. Still laughed occasionally, but it felt brittle, fragile. Like we were both pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. She was exhausted from late nights. I was exhausted from teaching extra hours, from carrying debt I couldn't talk about, from the constant weight of not being enough. I wanted to ask if there was someone else, but I was terrified of the answer, so I buried myself in work, took on extra tutoring students, cut corners on groceries, told myself we'd get through this, but she was slipping away and I didn't have the strength to hold on. It happened on a Tuesday. I came home from work, drenched in sweat, my shirt sticking to my back. Rina was sitting at the kitchen table. She wasn't in her work clothes, she wasn't cooking, she was just sitting, hands folded, eyes on the floor. "I need to tell you something," she said. My stomach dropped. "Okay." She took a breath. "There's someone else?" The words hit like a physical blow. I stared at her, waiting for her to take it back, to say she was joking, testing me, anything. But she didn't. "He's a foreigner," she continued, voice steady but quiet. "An older man. American like you. He can help my family more. He has money, real money. He can give me what you can't." I felt the air leave my lungs. "So, what was I?" My voice came out as a whisper. "A placeholder? A trial run until something better came along?" Her eyes filled with tears. "No, don't say that. I loved you. I did. I still do, in a way. But love doesn't pay hospital bills. Love doesn't keep my siblings in school. Love isn't enough." I finished for her. She nodded, tears streaming down her face now. "I tried. We tried. But I can't watch you struggle anymore. And I can't keep asking you for things you don't have." I wanted to scream, to rage, to tell her she was selfish, ungrateful, that I'd given up everything for her. But all I could manage was, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She finally looked up and her expression broke my heart all over again. "Because I didn't want to hurt you." But pretending was hurting both of us more. She packed over the next 2 days, slowly, a blouse here, a pair of shoes there, like maybe if she did it gradually it would hurt less. The night she left for good, she hugged me at the door. I didn't hug back, my arms hung at my sides, heavy and useless. When the door closed behind her, the silence rushed in. The same silence I'd run from back home, except sharper now because I knew what it felt like to fill it with her laughter, her voice, her presence. I sat on the couch until dawn, staring at nothing. The days after blurred together. I went to work, came home, ate whatever I could find, collapsed into bed. My students noticed something was wrong. They asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was fine, just tired. I thought about staying in Manila, trying to rebuild. I had colleagues, neighbors, the city itself still buzzing with life. But it all felt hollow now. Manila wasn't the place where I'd found love anymore. It was the place where I'd lost it. I saw her once, about a month later. I was at a mall in Makati, buying groceries, when I spotted her across the food court. She was with a man, older, maybe 60s, heavy-set, wearing an expensive polo shirt. She looked different, hair professionally done, nicer clothes, new jewelry. She didn't see me. I stood there frozen, watching them laugh over coffee. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I turned and walked away before she could notice me. It took another month to admit it to myself. I had no reason to stay. The woman I'd built my life around was gone. The dream I'd chased had collapsed. All that was left was debt, disappointment, and an apartment that felt like a prison. I booked a flight home. The night before I left, I stood on the balcony one last time. The traffic roared below. The air was thick with heat and exhaust. I thought about everything that had happened in the past year, the joy, the heartbreak, the hope, the crushing reality of it all. And I realized something. I didn't regret it. It hurt like hell. It had cost me my savings, my stability, maybe a piece of my heart I'd never get back. But for a few months, I'd felt alive. I'd felt needed. I'd touched a life completely different from mine and learned things about the world, about struggle, about survival, about love, that I never would have understood sitting in my comfortable American life. I couldn't save her. I couldn't even save myself. But I could respect her choice because she wasn't a villain. She was a woman trying to survive in a world that gave her very few options. The next morning, I boarded the plane. As Manila shrank beneath the clouds, I whispered a goodbye. To her, to us, to the man I'd been when I first arrived. The flight back felt longer than the one that had brought me to Asia. Maybe because I knew what waited on the other side. When the plane landed, I sat in my seat long after the seatbelt sign went off, watching people rush to gather their bags, families reuniting, couples leaning into each other, business travelers already on their phones. I sat there, my body back home, my heart still somewhere over the Pacific. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it, sterile, quiet. The framed wedding photos were long gone, but their absence felt louder than their presence ever had. The first few nights I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake, listening for sounds that weren't there, the hiss of rice cooking, Rina humming in the kitchen, the chaos of Manila's streets outside the window. Instead, silence. Work welcomed me back with polite nods and sympathetic looks. Nobody asked too many questions. The credit card bills piled up. My savings account was drained. Reality bit hard. I could have been angry. At Rina, at myself, at the universe for letting me believe this could work. But when I looked back, the anger fizzled out. Because what good would it do? She'd chosen survival. Her family had needed her. Her world was built on scarcity, on impossible choices. Mine had been built on comfort, and the naive belief that love could overcome anything. I didn't understand her reality until I was living in it, and even then I barely scratched the surface. For her, money wasn't greed, it was survival. For me, it had always been an afterthought, until it became the wall between us. That realization didn't make the heartbreak easier, but it gave it shape, meaning. Months passed, the pain dulled the way pain eventually does. I forced myself to rejoin life, coffee with friends, walks in the park. I started going to the gym again. Small steps. Sometimes I'd meet people who'd traveled to the Philippines. They'd talk about beaches and island hopping and the nightlife. I'd smile and nod, but I never told them about Rina. That story was mine to carry. At night, when the loneliness crept in, I'd open the shoebox where I kept a few things. A photo of us at Tagaytay. The shell bracelet she bought me at a market. A grocery list in her handwriting. I'd let myself feel it. The joy, the loss, the ache. And then I'd close the box and put it back on the shelf. The past didn't own me anymore. I think about going back sometimes. To the Philippines. Not to find her. That ship has sailed. But because for a brief moment that place made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. What I do know is this. I went to the Philippines running from one kind of pain and found a completely different kind. But I also found beauty, connection, and a deeper understanding of what it means to love someone whose world is nothing like yours. I don't regret it. I can't. Because even though it ended badly, even though I came home broken, those months with Rina taught me more about life than the 12 years of my marriage ever did. So, yeah, that's my story. I'm not looking for sympathy or advice. I just wanted to share it with someone who might understand. Your channel talks about the reality of expat life in the Philippines, the good and the bad, and I thought maybe this would resonate. Thanks for giving people like me a place to tell our stories. I'd rather not share my name, but you can call me, I don't know, call me the guy who tried. Take care, man, and keep making these videos. People need to hear the truth. Have you been through something similar, or are you thinking about making the move to the Philippines? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this opened your eyes to the reality of expat relationships here, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Subscribe to Journals Beyond Horizons, because someone needs to tell you the truth before you learn it the hard way.